Inform if you can see my screen and listen to my voice so that we can proceed. All right, thank you. Hey Zafar, good evening. All right, and just a second, staff, do we need to wait for someone to continue, or how is that? All right, so let's continue. If you have any questions, please ping me so that I can respond back to you, or you can just raise your hand so that I can unmute you and you can ask your questions. So this is the course content or the training planogram that we'll be looking at. On the day one, we will be looking at introduction to business objects, then little history on the business objects, and what is the difference between business objects enterprise and data services, so that we'll have a knowledge on the entire box and purpose of this tool, the capabilities, look and feel, the terminologies and the jargons that we use in data services, the architecture, then walk through on the designer, then how do you create, what is the repository, what is the job server, and how do we set up the environment. So if somebody gives us a freshly installed data services system, then how do we set up an environment to create it a project ready. So these are the things that we'll be looking at day one. And day two agenda, we look at different types of extractions and how do we do condition scripts and global variables on day two. And day three, we'll look at central repositories, single user instance and multi-user instance. So how do we set up a single user instance for a small and medium projects, and how do you set up a multi-user environment so that a large project can support that one. And after that, we will look at the built-in transformations, the platform transformation, the integrated transformation, and we will look at sample from the quality transformation, because the quality is associated with additional costs that we need to procure from SAP. And after that, we will look at the administration consoles, right? So both management console and central management console relevant to data services, how the admin works on this. And once this is done, we will look at the real-time jobs. So how do we handle the XML data, and what is a real-time job? How do you handle that? What is a WSDL? How do we expose, invoke and provoke a WSDL? We will look into all these things. And later we will look at introduction to HANA Studio and a walkthrough on the architecture and how do we connect and create connections on the HANA Studio. And once we look into that, we will see what are the different data provisioning mechanisms and how do you load the data into SAP HANA system, followed by the project session. So once we are done with HANA, we will look into the project session, where we will talk at different phases of the project and where and how different people will pitch in, like where a developer will pitch in, where a senior PC will pitch in, a principal consultant and architect, and where the administrator will pitch in, and where a senior developer or a lead consultant will pitch in. What are the roles of a manager? So we will look at the different phases of the project, and also with the methodologies and best practices. So what is the evolution of these methodologies, the best practices that are there in the market, and what is the recent best practice that is provided by SAP, and we will also walk through a recent project of mine where we have used most of the transformations and utilize the best practice, bestly used data services to satisfy the customer needs. So the main reason for picking up that project is we have done something that what SAP is promising to deliver in the next quarter. So we achieved that using some additional activities, so I'll walk you through on that project activity as well. So this is the course content, and every day it starts with a question. So if you have any questions in the previous session or a generic question on that day, I'll be glad to answer them, and then we can proceed to the next topic. Alright, so let's continue with today's topics. So I'll just give a quick recall on the introduction part, and then so that we can proceed because there was a slight gap between our demo and first class, so I just want to do a quick recall on what we spoke on the demo. So business objects is an independent organization before SAP acquired it, and so this is my business objects, and it is divided into two different groups. One is the reporting group, and the second one is the ETL group. Right. So this business objects is widely adapted by so many people across the globe, and SAP, its presence was shown by Gartner. Its presence was shown by Gartner pretty close to SAP, and its adaptation was pretty good across the globe because of its unique features. It can connect to any source and any target, and it can do a quick reporting on any source and any target. So is the reason SAP acquired business objects and named it after SAP. So each and every tool after SAP, each and every tool of business objects is named after SAP. So as a reason we have SAP business objects, right? So you must hear different terminologies like SAP BO, XI, R3, or you must have heard about SAP BO, then SAP BODS, some call it data services. So there are different words, or data integrator. So there are different jargons that are used in the market, and let me tell you like how they came into existence. I'll just walk you through the history of this evolution. So so this reporting tool is nothing but Business Objects Enterprise, where you have the Universe Designer or Information Design tool, which is a semantic layer. Then we have the reporting tools like Webby, Desky. Desky is not there in the recent version, but yeah, in the previous version 3.x it is there. Then Webby, Desky, Crystal, XLCS, and so on. So it's a semantic layer. On top of that, there are multiple reporting tools, 14 flavors of reporting, that is Business Objects Enterprise, the reporting side of Business Objects. And on the ETL side, Data Integrator, Data Quality, and a combined solution is Data Services. So Data Integrator and Data Quality combined together in one single system, it is Data Services. So let us look at the versions and its evolution. So initially, before SAP acquisition, the version is BO 6.x, right? And the reporting tool is called as BO 6.x, and the ETL tool, it is divided into two categories. One is DI, Data Integrator. One second. Data Integrator 6.x and data quality 6.x. There are two separate systems altogether. So data integrator is installed on one system and data quality is installed on the second system. And after SAP acquired, right? So after SAP acquired business objects, now everything is named after SAP. So the first release is 3.0. So on the reporting side, it is SAP Business Objects Enterprise 3.x, and on the ETL side, it is SAP BODS 3.x. So it is also called as SAP BOXI Data Services 3.0. So that is the first version of data services. So BO stands for business objects and XI stands for 11 and DS stands for data services. And after that BODS SAP BODS 3.2 came into picture because in the version 3.0 there are so many bugs. Okay, so many bugs that you really have to pull in some transformation just to avoid some syntax errors. So these kind of errors, and if you write a function call, you cannot go and modify that one. So all these changes were given of usage or unnecessary usage of merge transformation across the jobs and modification on the function calls. So these are the two major functions given, changes that are given from 3.0 to 3.2, and after that SAP BODS 4.0 came into picture. So earlier these two tools have their individual management tools, right? So this has central management console and data services has data services management console. So data services management console is an admin tool for data services, and central management console is an management tool for business objects enterprise, the reporting side. But from version 4.0, they made central management console as a common admin tool for both data services and business objects enterprise. Now central management is an admin tool for both business objects enterprise and data services, where we register the repositories, maintain the single user instance and everything, right? Maintain the single sign-ons and everything is done in the central management console itself. And after that, SAP BODS 4.1 came into picture with small upgrades, and SAP BODS 4.2 is the latest version on which we'll be looking at this training. So I'll be working on Data Services 4.2, and we will be working, or we will be learning on all the roles like developer, admin, architect, and tester. So I will be looking at all these responsibilities, since data services is a very small tool. So I don't want just to limit this to a developer's tool or an admin tool or a tester's tool. So we will look at the end-to-end scenarios that I know, or as an architect, the knowledge that I have on this tool. I try to share each and every bit of it with you, and everything we will be looking at is a scenario-based approach. So we will look at everything, each and every transformation or each and every session referring to a scenario, unless and until we don't have any good one. Most of the scenarios that I worked on my previous projects, I'll try to recall them into this training, and we will look at this scenario-based approach on each and everything. So this is a quick introduction or a history of business objects data services, and now we will go and look at the tool, right? So if you look at data services, so data services has multiple tools within it, right? So if you go to the navigation, start all programs, SAP Data Services 4.2. So you have different tools like Data Services Designer, Data Services Management Console, Repository Manager, Server Manager, and Data Services Workbench and License Manager. And along with that, you also have SAP Business Intelligence, in which you have BA platform for where your central management console is present. So these are the different tools of data services, and though we have multiple tools, the architecture is so tightly bound that we will feel that we are working on a single tool. So now let us say, so this is an admin role that we'll be looking at. So somebody gives us, so let's say that we pitched into a project, and we got a new project, and customer has a system on which data services is installed, and or his server where data services is available, and he will ask us to go ahead and work on the project. So first thing that we will do is how many objects, we call them as objects, or how many modules as per SAP we have, and we just do an estimate like how many people we need to work on this project based on the work that is available. So based on the number of objects that needs to be delivered or number of jobs that needs to be built, we will go and do an estimate on how much manpower we need for this project. So for that, we will estimate like 5 people, 10 people that are required for this project, like 5 developers, 2 testers, 1 admin, right, and 1 code promotion consultant. Right, so let us say this is my estimation on the requirement for the project. So 5 developers, 2 testers, 1 admin, and 1 code promotion consultant. Now I had to give them an access to the data services system. So how do I give them access? So if I want this developer to connect to data services system, or this tester to connect to the data services system, or admin to connect to the data services system, or a code promotion guy to do a code promotion activity, so I need to allow them to connect to the data services system. So how do I do that? I do that by creating a repository. So what is a repository? So repository is a tool or is a location where my individual work will reside. So if I, as a developer 1, if I'm trying to log into data services and connect to the system, so my work and all my credentials and everything will be linked to a one repository. So let us say if there's a multi-user environment where I need to create multiple users, so user 1, user 2, and user 3. So I need to give them, each and every one of them, a separate repository so that they can work on their individual activities. So it will not be one repository that everybody will connect to. Every user will have his local repository 1 and local repository 2 and local repository 3. So this repository has the entire information about user 3, like when he logs into that repository it will accept him, and then all the jobs that he has done before will be saved in his local repository. Likewise, the user 2's information will be saved in his local repository 2, and all the previous jobs that he has built will be saved there, and so on. So administrator can access all the local repositories. Right, since he has an admin privilege, he can go and log in, and we can also allow all the users to log into the others repository if it is a project requirement, or we can restrict him only to that local repository that he is mapped to. Okay, so now how do I create this local repository? Right, to create a local repository, or just let me show this presentation. So in the demo presentation we spoke about the architecture slide. So if you look at this architecture slide, so first thing that we need to do is create a database. And because as I told you, data services will not save even a single record. So whatever the repository information that we create here, or when we create a local repository, certain information will be mapped and generated for that particular user. So that information should be saved somewhere so that every time this guy connects to the system will recognize him. So first we need to create a database, and on top of the database we need to go and create a local repository. So once we create a local repository, we need to go and register that on the job server. So if it is a fresh system, we need to go and create a job server and register our local repository on the job server. Or if it is an existing project and you are trying to add one more user to that local repository environment, then you will go and add your local repository to the existing job server. So these two scenarios we will be looking at this in step 3. And step 4, you go and register your local repository in the management console, and once it is done, step 5 is to log into the designer with this local repository credentials, and you can start working on the project. So it's a simple 5-step process that an administrator will do once he connects to the project or once he starts the project. Step 1 is to go and create a database. Second step is create a local repository using a repository manager. The tool that we use is repository manager for creation of local repository. Then the third step is create a job server and assign the local repository to the job server. This scenario we will use when we are creating a fresh system, fresh instance. So you are trying to create an environment for a project, so you go and create a job server and assign your local repository to that. But if the job server is already there and you are just trying to add one more person to that project, so the activity that you will do as an administrator is add your local repository to the existing job server. Then the fourth step is register your local repository in the management console, and fifth step is to log into designer using your local repository credentials, right? So this is a simple 5-step process, and this is called as setting up the system. So once you get into the project, you need to create local repositories and give it to different users. So this is the first step, first technical aspect of the project that we'll be doing on, that we'll be working on. We will analyze how many people required for this project, and we'll start creating the local repositories. So let's go and do this one. We will create a local repository for ourselves for this training batch, and we will go and start doing everything from the scratch in that local repository. To set up a local repository, so first step that I need to do is go and create a database. So to create a database, so this server has Microsoft SQL Server as a backend database. So Oracle is supported, DB2 is supported. I'll just show you the list of databases that are supported. So the navigation for Microsoft SQL Server is Start, All Programs, Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2, and Microsoft Server 2000 Management Studio. So I repeat the navigation. It is Start, All Programs, Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2, and Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So once you click on that, it will ask you to log in. So here this is the server name, and we are connecting to the database engine, And there are two modes of authentications in which we log into your SQL Server. One is your Windows authentication, where there is no need for you to give a password and a username. It will take your Windows credentials, the user ID and password with which you logged into the system, uh, and try to connect you to this SQL Server Management Studio, just in case if that username and password is accepted here, or if not, it will log in with a SQL authentication. So here we log in with SQL authentication. So you need to give the username and password and just click on connect. And once you click on connect, you will see the database connected to the server Bevo 4.1, or sorry, Bevo 41, and you see the list of databases under the databases here. So these are the existing databases that are created, and then you'll see the securities. So how many logins are there on the system, right? So Bevo 41 / Rakesh I is also accepted user, so I can also connect to this one with my Windows authentication, right? And tsrep is the username and password that we use. So that is the default user and password for the system. So dsrep is the username that is available. So all these logins are accepted, right? So what are the logins that you see here? So those are accepted. So this is again, beyond our scope on data services. This is something that the DBA will do, but on a technical front. So the first thing that data services administrator will do is he will raise a request for he will raise a request to the database administrator to create the databases, because on a live system we will not have an access to all these tools unless and until we are working for a pretty small customer and we take up the responsibility to set up his entire environment. We'll not have an access to all these tools. So first we'll go and raise a request saying that, okay, I need 5 databases to be created with so-and-so usernames and password, or without a username and password, just go and create 5 databases. So once this ticket is raised, the DBA will work on this one and he will give me the names of databases that he has created. So once he communicate these databases name, so I'll start creating a local repository from my data services end. But I'll also show you how to create a database. So just checking on the names. So if I want to create a new database, I need to select this databases, do a context menu, right click and go for new database, and I will give the name as db_lr1. So just one more thing that I want to make sure is we follow this training with a proper naming conventions, right? So at each and every level we'll follow the project standards, so it will be easy for us to work on the project, or we will feel pretty much similar if we get into the real-time scenario. So I'll try to train you on the project standards right from the scratch. So to create a database, you need to select this databases, do a context menu and give the database name db_lr and click on OK, and this database will be created at the bottom. And if you just refresh that one, just refresh it and it will be sorted in the alphabetical order. Okay, so my DB_lr is present here, LR1. So this is how I create my database. It's a very simple process. Now if you expand this database that is created, you don't have any tables or system tables under that. This is a complete empty database. So once we create the repository level information will be fed into this database. So that's the reason why I'm showing you an empty database here. So step number 1 done. Step number 2. So creating a local repository using the repository manager. So let's go to this repository manager. The navigation for that tool is Start, All Programs, Data Services 4.2, and here we have Repository Manager. I repeat, just in case if you are trying to take a quick notes, I repeat the navigation. It is Start, All Programs, Data Services 4.2, and Repository Manager. So this Repository Manager is a pop-up window that you get on the screen, and here it will ask you which type of repository that you are trying to create. So when I say a repository, there are three types of repositories that are there in BODS landscape. One is your local repository for every individual to connect to the data services designer, and the second one is a central repository. So just in case if you are working on a distributed environment, and okay, so in case if you are working on a multi-user instance, right, so user one, and let us say that a team is working on the finance modules, like one is working on accounts payable, the second one is working on accounts receivable, third one is working on asset accounting, asset management, and general ledger, and so on. So now I want to club all these jobs in one single location. So all these local users from their local repository, they will upload their code into a common shared place called as a central repository. So from their local, they will upload the code into the central repository so that it will be available for everyone. Hey Sandeep, go ahead. Sandeep, I think there is some small confusion. It's at 6 a.m. IST. Apologies for that, Sandeep. So what we will do is I'll share this recording with you, and if you have any questions, please, you can just look at that, and you can reach out to me with any questions if you have. Is it okay? All right. Thank you, man. I mean, there was a slight confusion because the last session we had on the demo, it's at 7:30 a.m. IST, and the class is shifted to 6 a.m. So there's a bit confusion on that one, and sorry for that. So from going forward, we'll have the session on the same time, right? Right. Apart from that, now all these local users, they will go and upload their jobs into the central repository so that it will be a common place where everybody can access that one. So for that reason, you create central repository. So we'll cover a lot about this, end-to-end, in and out, 8 certification questions. I will cover. So if we are planning to look at certification, there are 8 questions on central repository, and we will cover each and every question on that one, right? So one more thing, if you are looking at doing your certification, you can practice for one week and go ahead and write your certification after once the training is done. I promise you'll complete that if you just put some efforts on the practice, because we will be covering each and every bit of that data services which is required for the certification as well. So central repository is the tool, and profiler repository. So when you are trying to do analysis on the data, like data health assessment activities, the primary keys having null columns, or the completeness on the data, the consistency on the data. So if you are trying to do such activities, so those stats will be saved in your profiler repository, or we'll go and create a profiler repository for calculating the stats on the data, profiling activities. So as of now, we are going to create a local repository, the first one. So I selected repository type to be local. And the second one, these are the different types of databases on which you can go and create your local repositories. So data services can stand as a second layer on these databases. So one is Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, SAP HANA, SQL Anywhere, and Sybase. So you can go ahead and build, if let us say if you are getting into a customer discussion and they say that they have data services, and when we raise them a question saying that, hey, I need one more backend database to be installed so that I can go and create my repositories on that. So these are the databases that you can list out to the customer. So Microsoft SQL Server is that one that is available on our system. Alright, it's Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2. So I selected that from the drop down, and most of the projects they have Microsoft SQL Server. Then the database server name. Right, so how do I know that? So when I go and connect to the server, so here I see the server name. It's BO41. So I just give the server name there. And next one is the database name, the one that we created, DB_LR. Then the username and password. So once you give all these things, the next step is to go and click on create, but do not do that. So if you consider the real-time environment, so you raise a request to the database administrator, and database administrator responds you back with the list of databases that you want him to create. So just in case, so he will be giving something like this, DB_user1 and DB_user2 and DB_user3. So just in case he gives you a repository database name that is already on which already a repository is created, right? It's a typo. Since instead of giving 3, he gave 2 on which you already created a database. So let us take a scenario that you are trying to add one more user to the existing environment, and you ask the database administrator to give you a new database, but instead of giving DB3, so he gave you DB2. So in those cases, what happened when you go and click on create, it will drop and recreate the entire repository, which means whatever the work that is done by this developer will be lost and a fresh repository will be created. Yeah. So Zafar, to answer this question, if you are working on a Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, then yes, you need to create a separate database for each and every user. And if you are working on an Oracle, it will be a single database and different schemas. So the concept on the database side, it is like this. That's a good question. So on the SQL Server Management Studio, it is like database name dot owner name, right? So this is my schema. And but on the Oracle side, it is schema name dot database name. So here under each schema there will be multiple databases, DB1, DB2 and so on. So it is identified by this. So generally when you connect to an Oracle system, you connect through schema, and from that schema you look at the databases. But on the SQL side it will be a database to which you connect, and within a database you can create multiple owners, which means you can give multiple people access to a single database. And on the Oracle front, you can give a single user access to multiple databases. It is just tricky one, the other way around for these tools. So on a SQL server, if you are creating, yes, you need to create individual databases. And if it is on the Oracle front, they will create a username and map it to the same database. So it will be DB, so it will be U1, comma DB.U2 and so on. So did I answer your question, Jafar? Right, I guess yes. So yeah, so if we have 5 developers, we need to go and create 5 databases. Okay. So to avoid that drop and recreate, or just to make sure that whatever you get is a new database, right? So what you need to do is go and click on get version first. So it says the database exists, but the repository tables are not valid. So which means this repository manager is able to communicate with your backend database with the credentials that you gave here, but it says it is not a valid repository. So if you get this message, you can go and click on, you can proceed to click on create. So once you click on create, it will add all these information, the repository information, to your local repository, so that once you log into the system, it will work like your local repository. So it is adding all the XML templates, miscellaneous jobs, installing the load balancing jobs, calculating user dependencies, adding your transformations, right? So now once you're done with this, you'll get a message saying that the local repository was successfully created. Now let us go and click on get version to see the message that you'll get if you give an existing repository name here. So it says the repository version so and so is available, right? So this is the message that you get if I give a repository that is already existing here, or the database on which a repository is already built, and if I click on create get version, I get this message. Alright, now let us go and check on the database side. So how different is it now before creating repository and after creating repository? I'm just refreshing it. And if you expand the tables, so all these tables are created within your repository when you're trying to create a repository using your repository manager. So machine information, object attributes, so what each and every granular level information that is required for you to work on that local repository is maintained at the back end in this database. So that is your repository database. So one thing I would like to recommend is so if you are using a database for your repository, generally do not use it for your staging, because this is some mistake that people do. They'll have a single database, they'll create a repository on that, and they will also save their intermediate tables on the same database. Please do not do that. You need to maintain a separate database for this local repository, because the reason why is, so each and every database has a cap, right? A limit where it will crash, or it will give you a warning saying that it cannot handle more than this. So if we are using the intermediate staging tables as a part in the same database, so one day it will reach the capacity, one day it will reach the limit, and it will get crashed. So whatever the jobs and everything that you have in your local repository will be gone. So do not use the database that you create for local repository for any other purposes. You can just have a separate database for that. So step number 2 is done, where we created a local repository using our repository manager. So step number 3 is create a job server and assign it to the local repository, or add your local repository to the existing job server. So to go and create a job server, the navigation is Start, All Programs, Data Services 4.2, and Server Manager. So Server Manager is the job server tool, right? So using Server Manager, you can go and create your job servers or manage your existing job servers. So I repeat the navigation. It is Start, All Programs, Data Services 4.2, and your Server Manager. So if you just click on the Server Manager, it will give you a pop-up window where it will show the existing job servers. So under the job server tab, it will show the existing job servers. And if you want to configure your editor, so just click on that, and once you click on that, you can go and modify your job servers by selecting the existing job server and click on edit, right? Or if you want to create a new job server, you need to go and click on add. So before you click on add, you just make sure that each and every job server has a unique port number here. So 3500, 3501, and we don't have 3502. So if I create a job server, I can give the port number as 3502. Do we need to follow the solution architecture suggestions for the setting up the database? Yeah. So on a project level, yes, we need to go and check with him like how many databases or how many local repositories are required for this project, and based on the suggestions that are given by the solution architect, so we can go and create those many repositories or create those many databases and build local repositories on top of that. Okay. So to create a new job server, just click on Add, and this is the window where you go and create a job server. The job server name starts with JS underscore, and you can give the client name ABC, right? And this communication port number 3402. So it should be unique. It should not be utilized by any of the job servers here. So make sure that you choose a unique port number, a communication port number, a job server port here. And once you give this one, so this is how you just need to give the job server name and job server port. And under the associated repositories, you just need to click on Add to activate the repository information tab on the right hand side. So select the server on which your repository is available, the server name, the database name, and the username and password. And you can make this repository as a default repository to this job server, and once you click on apply, your job server will be created with this repository getting mapped to that job server. So you can click on apply, but since there are so many job servers, I will try to show you the second scenario where I will add my local repository to an existing job server. So I'm selecting an existing job server and click on edit. So these are the associated repositories. To associate our repository, go and click on add, give our repository information, the server name, the database name on which the local repository is created, the username and password for connecting to that database, and just click on apply. So now our local repository db_lr is added to the existing job server, and once you click on OK and OK, so it will not have a button like OK and close. It will ask something like close and restart or close. So when I click on close and restart, it will say it will restart the services on the machine. So which services? So especially if you are working on a server, so you will have this once you install data services on a server, so you'll have the services running in the backend. So for that you need to go to Control Panel, select the Administrative Tools, and go to Services, and on the list of services you will see something called SAP Data Services. Right, so if I go and restart this one, click on OK, so what it says, it will restart the data services on this machine, which means this particular service will be restarted. So just let me click on OK and refresh this one. Now it is stopped. So now it is started, right, which means it is restarted. So every time you go and add a local repository to a job server, the services will be restarted so that everything will be in sync. So these services you'll be able to see once you connect to the server alone, but from the front-end system, so if you are maintaining a clustered environment, you'll not be able to see the services. So step number 3 is done. So creating a job server or adding your local repository to an existing job server. Then the step number 4 is adding your tool to the registering your local repository to the management console. So one thing that you need to keep in mind, if you are working on the version data services 3.x, so it can be 3.0, 3.2, so you register your local repository in data services management console, right? So from only 4.x, you register that in central management console. So keep this in mind when you are, if you are working on an older version of data services, or sometimes you get into some AMS project, annual maintenance and support. So in that project, the customer must have an older version of data services which is already built, and on that activities, if you want to go and look at the registered repositories, they will be present in Data Services Management Console in the version 3.x. But in the version 4.x, you need to register that in Central Management Console. So to do that, the navigation is Start, All Programs, Business Intelligence. It is not Data Services now. SAP Business Intelligence, SAP BI Platform 4, and here I have this tool called Central Management Console. So Business Intelligence, sorry, Business Objects BI Platform, Central Management Console. So this CMC, all the management consoles and data services, either it is a data services management console or a central management console, these are web-based tools. So if you remember our presentation, we have a word called web-based tools to deploy the administration. So web-based administrations do a quick deployment of users or environment. So these management tools, right, both the central management console and data services management console, they open with the web page. So 6400 is the default communication port for this management console, and these are given at the time of installation. So there's no need to worry about this. So 6400 is the default port given for this central management console, and give the username and password, and just click on login. And once you click on login, you will see the CMC homepage, Central Management Console homepage. So this is a common tool for both Business Objects Enterprise and Data Services, the common admin tool for both Business Objects Enterprise and Data Services. So you will have activities related to both the Business Objects Enterprise and the Data Services here, and the common user activities also. So if you want to go and create a user, you click on Users and Groups, and you will see this Create User icon. So once you click on this one, we can go and create a user and map him to the different groups. So likewise, I can work on the universe front, on the connections front, on the query as web services front, on the OLAP connection. So I can do all the admin activities from my central management console for the entire BO box. So for our case, in our case, we need to connect to data services. So just click on data services. So you can click on the start page, or from the drop down, or if you just scroll to this one, you get this icon here. So even if you click on this, it will take you to the data services, and the only admin activity related to data services that we do here is registering the repositories, right? So these are the list of local and central repositories that are profiler repositories that are registered with the central management console. So to add a new local repository or to register your local repository to the central management console, so click on configure new central local repository, configure new data services repository. So click on this cube icon here, and give the repository name. It can be any name or a description. You can give it here. Then the database on which it is created, it is Microsoft SQL Server, and the server name is Vivo 41, and this is the default port for registered local repositories, so don't change that, and the database name is db_lr1. And Windows authentication, no, we are logged in with SQL authentication, and the username is dsrep. And it's a profiler repository, no, it is not a profiler repository. So just click on test connections. Once you give all the credentials, just click on test connections to make sure whatever the credentials that you gave here are correct. So it should say successfully connected to the repository. So once you get this message, you can click on save, and once it is refreshed, you can see the repository added to the list of repositories. Okay, you can easily identify that with the description or the database name. So if you want to cross-check that, you can double-click on that one, and it will open the repository edit page. So now step 4 is done. Now step 5 is to log into your repository. So the reason why we had this job server, management console, everything before creating our or before logging into the designer is, so once you log into the designer, you will start working on your jobs. So if you want to execute your jobs, your repository should be mapped to your job server. That is point number 1. And if you are in a landscape, and you should be visible to your administrator. So you register your local repository in the central management console. So step number 5, log into the designer. The navigation is start, all programs, Data Services 4.2, and Data Services Designer. So I repeat the navigation. It is step start, all programs, Data Services 4.2, and Data Services Designer. So once you click on this, it will give you a logon pad where you need to key in the username and password. So server name is Vivo41, and so I give the username and password, and I keep the authentication to the enterprise level, and just click on login. So once you click on login, the newly created repository will also be added to the list. Or if I restrict a user to look at only this repository, so when I log in with his credentials, only one repository will be displayed here in the list. So select the repository and click on OK, and here you need to give the database password using which you connected or you logged in here, or if there is a specific password and a username created for this particular database apart from the actual login. So I can go and create a user here and a password, and I can log into that repository using that password. So I'm giving the password that I created earlier, or that I used earlier to log into the database, and the same password while I created my local repository. And this is a fresh instance, a local repository, LR1, and this is where we'll be working as a data services designer. So the initial step that we learned is an admin activity. So if somebody gives you a freshly installed data services and says, hey, you can start working on this project, then that system is not at all a project ready system. So we need to go and create a local repository on top of that, so that we will allow or provision the users to log into the system and start working on that. So any questions on this before I go into the walkthrough of designer? So any questions on these 5 steps? So if you have any questions or any clarification required, please ping me or please raise your hand so that I'll unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question. Alright, so just in case if you have any question in the future, please relate to this topic and stop me anywhere. I'll be glad to answer that. So the next one is a walkthrough on the designer. So this is our data services designer, and it is divided into 3 areas. One is your project area, and the second one is your local object library, and the third one is your quick start page. So initially it is divided into 3 different areas. So if you look at this project area is again divided into 3 subtabs. One is your designer, monitor, and log. So when I design my job, I will be in the designer tab, and when I execute my job, it automatically goes to the monitor tab where it runs the job, and all the job level run statistics are shown here. And if you want to look at the logs of your previous execution, you can go and click on this logs tab, and it will have the job name. And so just let me log into my previous batch local repository so that it will be easy for us to understand what is there. The reason why it is asking for a second time entering the username and password is because we have created a central repository here. So right. So if you look at this one, this project area is divided into 3 tabs. One is the designer tab, and the second one is the monitor tab, and the third one is the log tab. So if you look at the designer tab, it's as of now it is empty. But now if I pick in one project from my local object library and double click on that, that project is called into my project area. So we'll talk in details like once we start on this, but just to give you a heads up now. So if you look at the project area, so it has all the jobs related to that particular project, or all the relevant jobs placed in one folder called as a project. And when I execute a job, I can see my job in the monitor tab. So let us execute one. So as the job runs, it will automatically take you to the monitor tab where you will see the job execution statistics. So this is again divided into 3 areas: trace, monitor, and error. So if in case your job fails, you'll get an error message. If your job doesn't, then this error message is grayed out. So next one is the monitor. So if I click on this monitor tab, it will show me a traffic signal post which says which will be in green when the job is running, and which will turn to red when the job is stopped. Or if it is a failure in the job, it will show a cross mark against this one. I'll rerun this job. So now you see the traffic post as green, and once the job is done, it will go to red. Or if there is any error in the job, it will have a cross mark against it. So this is what a monitor does, and next one is the logs. So I ran this job twice now, so it will maintain the logs of both executions. So likewise, you can do a quick search on the job. So just in case if we delete the backend dump files to maintain the server, so these dumps will be gone, but this is where you go and see the logs of these jobs. So this is my project area where it is divided into three: designer when we create a new job, monitor when we run the job, and logs to see the previous log execution. And the other area here is our local object library. So this local object library is divided into 8 tabs, right? So I mean, you can unpin and pin these things. It's a quite flexible window. If you want to see a bigger picture, you can just unpin them, or you can pin them if you just want to look at the local repository, or if you want to set it back to the default layout, you can go to view in the menu bar and click on apply default layout, which will bring it back to the normal shape. So in the local object library, it is divided into 8 tabs. So if you just look at this, the first tab is my projects tab. Right, so all the projects will be there. So what is a project? Project is nothing but a folder where you keep the relevant jobs. So on a project front, right, if I'm working, I also already took this example of finance module. If I'm working on a finance, all my jobs, accounts payable, accounts receivable, asset accounting, asset management, everything will be under this project. But generally we do not categorize each and every module as a project. So let us take an example where you're working on a huge project which has 100+ objects to be delivered, right? So in those cases, tracking the development activities will be pretty difficult. So what we did when we worked with SAP on this project was we created main streams. One is the marketing stream, the second one is the sales stream, and the third one is the finance stream. So we categorized these objects into 3 streams and we monitored the project per stream. So what I will do, I'll create a stream, and for that stream I'll create a project, and all the objects, jobs related to that particular stream will fall under that project. So finally, when I consolidate all these streams, I'll have all the jobs, plus majorly it will be 3 projects that I will be handling. So it will be easy for me to track down all my jobs and look up jobs within that particular stream. So project is nothing but a folder where you have all the relevant jobs together. So these are the different projects that are available. So you can have more than one job here. All right. The second one is the jobs tab. So if you click on this tab, it will have 2 different types of jobs. So we spoke about this in the demo as well. So batch jobs deal with the master data, and real-time job deals with the transactional data. So when I say real-time, it is something like you will create a job to handle the transaction data, and you will convert it into a service, and we will run the service until the service is up and running, which means the job is continuously executed. So whenever there is a transaction hit on the source system, immediately in the fraction of a second, the same transaction will be pushed onto your target system. So that is a real-time job here. And data services batch jobs are used to handle the normal data, which is your master data. The third one is a workflow. So workflow is nothing but a folder where you keep relevant data flows together. So let us say I'm doing an extraction, right? So I create 10 data flows for extracting the data from 10 different source tables, right? So I keep all these data flows in one common folder called as my workflow. Okay, so this is my workflow in which I'll be having more than one data flows put together. So this is just like your projects. Just a second, right, I think just give me a second. There's a connection problem to my server. Okay. All right. Sorry, the server is down. If you want me to continue, I can connect into another server and walk you through that. Uh, right, Jaffer. One second. Jaffer, I'll send you an email. You can try to. I mean, you can directly reach me out if you have any questions. I'll share you my contact details here. So just trying to connect to the other server. So, alright, the second is the jobs tab where we have the batch jobs and real-time jobs categorized into two major categories. One is batch job and the second one is real-time job. The third one is the workflow where we can create a workflow and capture different data flows together. So when I'm trying to do an extraction activity, I can have all my extraction data flows placed in one workflow. It is just like a grouping activity. Next one is the data flow. The actual business happens here, right? So the source table, the target table, right, and the transformations, the actual business happens in your data flow. So if I double click on a data flow, the quick start page is now converted into my work area or my designer canvas. So this is where I have my source tables, my target tables, and my built-in transformations. Right. So all my built-in transformations I'm using within the data flow, and the actual data flow happens here from my source to target table, and the transformations in between, the actual conversion on the data, or the crux of the data services. The crux of the data services is in the data flow. This is where you do an extraction, transformation, and loading activity. So these data flows are divided into two different categories. One is your normal data flow, and the second one is your ABAP data flow. The reason for this is so let us say you have your source, you have your target, and you have data services in between, and you are sorry, you're extracting the data from your source and writing the data into your target. So I'll be just referring to this diagram again and again as we proceed with our training, just to make it, or just to refer back to what we spoke on day one. So this is what we do. We extract the data from the source and load it into the target using data services. This is an extraction, transformation, and loading activity, ETL activity that we perform, right? So let us say if it is my source is a database, right? I can directly connect to database, extract the data, and write it into my target system. So if my source is an SAP system, so there is an SAP system. So SAP system is an application that is built on top of a database. So this SAP application is built on top of a database. So it can be a DB2 or an Oracle system. So in those cases, right, if I raise a request from data services for a table, so what will happen? Data services will send a request to the application. Application sends the request back to the database. Database sends the response to application, and application sends it back to data services. So there is a continuous interaction between the application and database, which might strain the connections, right? So one thing. And second thing, as per SAP, if my data volume is less than 10,000 records, so I can go for a normal data flow even on an SAP system. But if my data volume is greater than 10,000 records, I have to go for an ABAP data flow. Okay, so on a project front, I've noticed if the data volume is greater than 50,000, then definitely you'll have you will notice a slowness in the system if you are using a normal data flow. But if you use an ABAP data flow, that will be pretty fast. But these are the SAP standards. Less than 10,000 records, you go with the normal data flow. Greater than 10,000 records, you go with an ABAP data flow. All right. So how will an ABAP data flow work? So when I say data services, this is the system on which data services is installed, and this is the system on which my SAP is installed. Right, so in this case, when I use an ABAP data flow, BODS sends an application, or BODS sends a request to SAP application. SAP sends it back to the database. Database, instead of communicating back to the application, it exposes the data into a common shared folder that is present in between SAP and data services. It can be on my data services system, or it can be a folder on my SAP system where the data is exposed into a flat file format. So from here, that data is read as a data from the flat file. So we are not straining the connections anymore. So it is one-time strain rather than twice. It's straining only once. You request the data from data services. The application sends the request to the database. Database exposes that to a common share folder, and data services reads from that common share folder. It is just like you pull in a flat file from a drive, a local drive, and does the conversion and write it back into your target system. So this is how an ABAP data flow works. Right, next one is the transformation. So you have three major categories and one newly added, text data processing, and the previous one are platform, the basic ones. So if you know these in and out, you can start working on any data migration projects. Integrators, so that will give you a little add-on to what you can do using your platform transformations, and data quality transformations. So these are two broadly divided into two categories. One is your address cleansing and the second one is your data cleansing activity. So these are the three transformation sets that are present here. Next tab is your data stores tab, so which will allow us to connect to the external system. So when I say, oops, I close this one. So when I have my source, my target, and my BOD system, and I say I connect to my source, I connect to both my sources, and I connect to my target. So how do I connect from data services? I connect using my data stores. So I'll create data stores to connect to these external systems. And using these data stores, I can read and write the data to my external systems. So this is what we create here, data stores. And next one is the formats tab, where we want to, if we want to add a flat file, right, to your data services system, so you can connect them from your flat formats tab. You can add flat files, you can add nested schemas, you can add Excel files. So different types of files you can add to data services. And the next one is the customs functions tab. So if you're trying to call in some custom functions from your source system, or if you're trying to create someone here, so this is where you go and create. So these are the built-in ones. So if you just double click on them, so you can see the backend script that is created for this one. So you can utilize this existing custom functions, or you can call in the function from any other source system or target, and if you want to validate the data. So a recent example for this is, we had a function in an Oracle system which will pick values. So it is a patient information that we get, and based on if it is serious, it will put a Y, and if it is a follow-up case, it is putting N. So it will give you a concatenation of 4 characters, Y, N, N, Y, 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 Y. So these are calculated using a function. So we call data services, we call that function into data services and let the data pass through that function, and this function returns the output, the concatenated value. So this is your local object library, which is nothing but your local repository. And on the right hand side, if you see this one, so you see a tool called as a tool palette, which has the most used objects of data services. So which is your data flow, transformation, table, template, and SAP transport. So, and these will be activated as you need. Like as if I just go to my start page, this will not be there. But if I click on my job, so I'll see this activated, and at a job level, the scripts are activated, the conditionals are activated, the while loop, try and cache is activated, and annotation is activated. So because you need them at the job level. So unless and until you go and create a data flow, you'll not need a template table or a transformation. So these things are grayed out here. Alright, so only data flow, workflow, pointer, and scripts, conditions, all these things are active. So we'll look in more in details to these as we proceed, and this is our menu bar where it has a new for creating a new project, open an existing project, save all, cut, copy and paste, print, close all the windows. So this will close all the active windows. And then you have local repository, central repository, variables, project area, output. And if you want to go and open the start page, you can go to help and go and click on show start page. Right, this is the navigator, backward and forward navigator. So if I just get into the job and the data flow, right, I can just navigate back or I can just navigate forward. So this is Data Services Management Console connection. So from here we connect to the Data Services Management Console from our data services. Again, this is Data Services Administration tool. It directly launches the Data Services Management Console. And debug, execute, stop debug, pause debug and all this, and filters and breakpoints within the data flow. So this is a quick walkthrough on the designer, and we will look in more details to this one. So if you have any questions on today's session, please let me know. I will clarify them, or if in case I don't have an answer, I'll try to get one by tomorrow and clarify your questions. Yeah, Lakshmi, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, sir.
Yeah, good morning,
Actually, live session, today's session 1, right? Already
Yeah,
2 sessions have
no, Lakshmi, this
already.
is session 1. We actually clubbed, few more people into this batch, so that is the reason why I repeated the same topic that you heard earlier.
Okay. So
This is session 1.
previously this is session 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then previously 2 sessions are over, no, sir?
No, I'll repeat them again, Lakshmi.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep. So any more questions on today's session? If you have any confusion, or if I confuse you, or all right, so I'll take it as no questions as of now, but if you have any questions, sorry. Go ahead, Bhargav. Yeah, Bhargav, you can go ahead and chat, or you can speak.
Hello.
Yeah, Bhargav, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So you shown 10 days. Will it over this course 10 days?
No, it will not be over. That is, just a breakup that I did in the initial days. So one is for 10, the other one is for 5, and this is for corporate training, or weekdays training. I just did that for 5 days, which is 8 hours training a day. And next one is 4 weekends, which is again 8 days, just to cover on the weekends for the weekend batches. So I just categorize that, but it will take 22 to 25 sessions to complete this training.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this is just to make sure that we don't miss on any of these topics. Yeah, Sandeep, you will get the recording session once this the session is being recorded. So, once you confirm on your availability for this training, we will be sharing you a Dropbox links where you need to download them on a daily basis, because we keep using the same Dropbox for other sessions as well. So, once you get this link, you better download that onto your system so that you will have a copy of that one. All right, any more questions? Abdul? All right, so thank you guys, thanks for your time, and people from India, have a good day ahead, and people in the US, have a good night. Take care, and appreciate your time. We'll catch up tomorrow at the same time in the session. It's you'll be getting an email notifications just 30 minutes before the class, and they will send one more email notification 15 minutes before, and 5 minutes before. So sometimes this might get into your spam folder, so just please check. And if in case you do not get any email notification, please reach out to me or ERP Extreme or to Ramya. Please reach out to us and just get in touch so that we will confirm on the schedule, and we will have a class daily, right? And we will not have a class on Sunday morning Indian time and Monday morning Indian time, which is like Saturday night US time and Sunday night US time. So the reason why we have this break is so that you can practice on the system. So once you confirm enroll, you'll be given a system access, and you can log into the server and you can practice all the discussions that we had across the week, and we both will be on the same page so that I can confidently go to the next topic and deliver that. And if you have any questions on the previous, you can stop me there, get them clarified, and then we can proceed to the next step. So that is the reason or intention having a holiday in between. So we will have a 2 days break in a week. So it is a 5 days training per week. So if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me or Ravi or Ramya. So we'll be glad to help you out. Right, thank you once again. Thanks for joining our sessions. Right, so we'll keep in touch. Right, see you tomorrow at the same time. So until then, bye.